Hello, all. Welcome to the latest episode of Chasing Green Arrows. Today, I'll be covering the best time to wildcard. Today, it's essentially a discussion on the different windows on when to use the first wildcard. So, as you know, FPL managers are allowed to use their first wildcard till 29th of December, Sunday, which is basically any time before game week 20. Now, traditionally, there have been two kind of perspectives on when to use the first wildcard. Some managers feel that a wildcard can be deployed when their team needs it. For example, when it needs an overhaul or when there are injuries in the squad. While the other sort of camp believes in a more strategic way to use it and to pre-plan it, and so that they can optimize their points in a window before it. Uh, I think this is an engaging discussion this time because of the new rule that FPL have introduced regarding the free transfers that can be saved by every manager. Moreover, this season, when you play the first wild card, your saved transfers won't reset to zero. So, for example, if anyone has saved up to 5 free transfers and if he ends up using a free hit or a wildcard chip, even after the wildcard or free hit is played, that manager will be able to start with 5 free transfers. Now, that is a big point because it's a huge difference and it should make a big difference in our thinking as opposed to the previous seasons. I personally feel as if this capability that FPL has allowed us this time to roll multiple transfers has kind of diminished the value of the first wildcard, because now what we can do is we can be in a position where we can save 3 or 4 free transfers at any point, and then should any crisis arise due to injury, we can just uh, navigate that crisis with the free transfers at our disposal. This essentially means that the threshold of playing a wild card is actually much lower as compared to previous seasons. Now, what I'll do is I'll look at 4 perspectives of when to play the wild card and why to sort of use the wild card in a particular window. So the first perspective that I've identified is playing the wild card before game week 4. Now, this has traditionally been a very common window to play the first wild card because it happens to be during the first international break. This is game week 4. I guess the main benefit of the strategy is to optimize the first 3 weeks by being over aggressive, targeting the teams with good fixtures, and then also to benefit from team value by jumping on the informed players during the international break. This historically has worked really well, and when you look at the graphic of the fixture ticker, you can see that the likes of Chelsea, Aston Villa, Everton, Man United, they're all fairly high up in the ticker, and all of these teams have relatively appealing fixtures from game week 4 onwards. And let's say if you're too scared to avoid Erling Haaland at the start of the season, you can just simply start with Haaland, have him for the game week 2 fixture against Ipswich, and then just jump off him uh, by the time you wildcard in game week 4. If you ask me my opinion, I'm not a huge fan of this strategy because 3 weeks is probably too less of a sample to gain information and to build my long-term team on. But I can see why it is appealing to some of the people who want to start quickly and want to build their team value. Now, the second window I'd like to discuss is one which I believe will be most popular uh, for the first wildcard this season. This is actually wildcarding before game week 6. Now, I say this game week will be popular for the wildcard because it happens to be immediately after Arsenal play Manchester City in game week 5. This actually, game week 6 is also a time where I feel that most managers who have accumulated free transfers, they would actually want to spend some of them. And because we would have had like 5 weeks of information by this time, we would have some clue on which players are playing well, how the new signings are performing, how the new managers are doing. Some of the players who were away at, let's say, the Euros or the Europa are likely to have returned as well. um, and I believe that most FPL managers would be in a position where they would have accumulated a sizable number of free transfers, and they would be in a position to take advantage of any price changes that may occur. So now, looking at the fixture ticker, Man City and Arsenal have a great fixture run after this point. Similarly, the likes of Everton and Brentford, two mid-table teams who generally post reliable underlying data, they have good fixtures as well. On the other hand, for example, if you have loaded up on Newcastle, you can jump off Newcastle because Newcastle's fixtures sort of take a turn for the worse. If anyone is committing to this strategy, I think it is probably better to start with as many Liverpool and Newcastle players as possible, because these are the two teams which have the best fixtures in the opening 5 weeks. Similarly, you can argue that perhaps Arsenal and Brentford, their coverage may be avoided, as three of the opening five fixtures are relatively tough on paper. Now, the third window I'd like to discuss is the Game Week 12 window. This is another window that falls in an international break. I think this strategy would suit the managers who have sort of started the season very, very strongly. 12 weeks of information, I believe, is a good time to sort of base your decisions on and to determine which teams and players to invest in. From this point onwards, as you can see in the fixture ticker in the graphic, Arsenal, Brighton, Wolves, and Chelsea all have an appealing run of fixtures, while Liverpool and Palace are teams which have some tough fixtures, so you can jump off them at this point. But again, I think there's some merit to playing the wildcard in Game Week 12, should things be going well. Now, the final strategy I would like to discuss is actually not pre-planning a window and just to play the wildcard when you believe your team needs it. I think this is a perfectly viable approach as well. It might be one that I might take. I think fellow FPL managers who may follow the strategy, what they'll end up doing is they will select a relatively low risk squad for Game Week 1 with plenty of squad depth. Now, I say that because this would allow them to then save as many free transfers as possible. They can just save as many transfers as they can before reassessing later. And I guess the reason behind sort of not pre-planning a wildcard could be if you believe that it's probably wise not to commit to a specific wildcard team at the start of the season. To be very honest, if I look at a Game Week 6 wildcard team and if I just look at a long-term team without a Game Week 6 wildcard in mind, the two teams don't look extremely dissimilar. So I can sort of see why someone would want not to pre-plan the wildcard. I mean, the differences between an early wildcard team and a long-term team are not that significant, in my personal opinion. The main benefit of the strategy would, of course, be that should any random wildcard opportunity arise as a result of, let's say, an injuries, or if, let's say, any budget enablers emerge, then you can just jump on them as need be. Yeah, that brings me to the end of the video. I hope you've liked the discussion. I would humbly request you to like the video and subscribe to the channel and to leave your feedback in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching.